I don't need your dirty money anymore. Get out! My mother's voice cut through the living room like the crack of a whip. The sound didn't just echo, it splintered something inside me. I froze near the doorway, still holding the grocery bag I'd brought home after my double shift. Margaret Lawson, 60, stood in her wine-red dress, framed by the flickering light of the chandelier she'd bought on credit last Christmas. Her laughter followed, sharp and cruel, a sound that used to make me smile when I was a little girl. Now it scraped against my bones, across the couch. Daniel Lawson, my older brother, shifted his weight, his smirk half hidden behind a beer bottle. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. That grin was enough. He'd been waiting years for this moment. The room was full of ghosts. Family photos lined the wall, birthdays, graduations, my father's old fishing trip. Every frame stared down at me like a witness. I used to think this house was my anchor. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom. "Mom," I whispered, my throat tightening. "What are you talking about?" Margaret waved her hand toward me, the diamond ring flashing under the light. "You heard me. I don't need your pity money. Claire, not anymore. My name, Claire Lawson, 27, waitress and part-time caregiver, felt like a curse when she said it. For years, I'd been her safety net. 2 jobs, long nights, barely enough to pay my own rent because she'd always needed something. A new fridge, a car repair, just until next month. Sweetheart. And now this. I stared at her face, painted perfectly, eyes bright with something I couldn't place at first. Joy. No, triumph. "What happened?" I asked, the words barely escaping my lips. She smiled like a magician about to reveal a trick. "Let's just say fortune finally decided to reward me for everything I've endured." Daniel chuckled. "You should have seen her face. Claire. You'd think she'd won the jackpot or something." The word jackpot hit me oddly. I didn't know why then, but my pulse skipped. Mom leaned back on the couch, swirling the last sip of wine in her glass. "You've always acted like I needed you, Claire. Always reminding me how hard you work, how you save this family." She tilted her head, mocking me. "Guess what? I don't need saving anymore." My breath caught. "Mom, what are you saying?" She stood, crossing the room in slow, deliberate steps. "I'm saying you can stop pretending to be the hero. I'm saying you can take your little paycheck and enough." The word burst out of me before I could stop it. My chest tightened, my eyes stung. I've never pretended to be anything but she cut me off with a wave, her laughter filling the air again. "You just worked for me. Claire, don't act like you did me a favor. Everything I have, I earned." Her voice broke off, replaced by that smile again, the same one she used when she got what she wanted. For a moment, the room blurred, the wine glass, the photos, Daniel's sideways grin. I couldn't feel my hands. All I could think about were the years that led to this moment. The nights I covered the mortgage after Dad left. The weeks I skipped meals so Mom could eat. The time I spent hours cleaning this very room after she fell asleep drunk and broke half the dishes. And now she was throwing me out. I dropped the grocery bag. The sound of cans hitting the floor snapped Daniel's head up. "Fine," I said quietly, voice trembling but steady. "You don't need me, then you'll never have to see me again." Margaret laughed softly, not cruel now, just certain. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." The moment froze like a photograph, her smile, Daniel's smirk, the broken trust hanging in the air like dust caught in light. I turned toward the door, but before stepping out, I looked back once. My mother had picked up a small paper slip from the coffee table, folded neatly, a lottery ticket. She held it delicately, almost reverently, and then it clicked. That was the glow in her eyes. A shiver crawled up my spine. "Congratulations," I murmured. "I hope it's worth it." Then I walked out, leaving behind the smell of wine, the laughter, and the only home I'd ever known. But even as the night air hit my face, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just started, something far uglier, far colder than being thrown out, because the woman who raised me didn't just want independence, she wanted to win, and I had no idea yet that her fortune was built on a lie. The cold night air bit through my jacket as I stepped off the porch, the door slamming behind me like a final verdict. But even as I walked away, part of me still needed to understand how we'd gotten here, how a mother's love had turned into this hunger for power. When I was little, I used to believe my mother, Margaret Lawson, was the strongest woman alive. She worked double shifts at the local hardware store after my dad left. She'd come home smelling like dust and metal, her hands cracked, her eyes red, and still find the energy to cook dinner for Daniel and me. Back then, she used to say, "Love doesn't pay bills." Claire, remember that. I thought she was teaching me survival. I didn't realize she was teaching herself greed. After Dad left, everything became about control. Bills, groceries, chores. Nothing moved in that house without her approval. The harder she worked, the tighter she held on. Somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as her daughter and started seeing me as her safety net. When I was 17, I got my first job at a diner downtown. I remember how proud I was handing her my first paycheck. She cried that night. I thought it was gratitude. Looking back, I think it was relief. Over the years, the dependence deepened. Whenever I tried to move out, she'd guilt me with tears or sickness or stories about how Daniel never helps. And Daniel, he learned fast that siding with her meant comfort. He'd pat my shoulder and say, "She just needs you a little longer," but a little longer turned into a decade. So I stayed, paid her rent when she fell behind, bought her groceries, even covered her hospital bills. I didn't notice the resentment building until it was too late, until she started comparing what she gave me to what I owed her. Now, as I walked into the dark street, my breath clouding the air, I finally saw the truth my mother's love had always come with a price tag. And somewhere between all those unpaid debts and unspoken sacrifices, she'd convinced herself that if she could just win something, anything, it would finally make her whole again. The cruelest part. She didn't realize she'd already won the lottery. She just couldn't see that it was me. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds of my small apartment like an uninvited guest. My eyes burned from the sleepless night, replaying every word my mother had said. I wanted to believe it was just anger, that she didn't mean it, but the sound of her laughter wouldn't leave my head. It was the kind of laughter people use when they've already decided you're beneath them. I went back to the house that afternoon, not to argue, but to pick up the last of my things. The driveway looked the same as it always had, cracked pavement, overgrown grass, but something felt different, almost staged. Through the front window, I saw my mother sitting on the couch, perfectly dressed, her posture straight like she was waiting for a photo to be taken. Daniel Lawson, my brother, sat beside her with his arms folded, eyes fixed on something in her hand. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with perfume and tension. "You came back," my mother said, smiling faintly. "Good. You'll want to see this." She lifted her hand, revealing a small piece of paper, a lottery ticket, crisp and perfect, the numbers neatly printed across it. "I told you," Daniel said with a grin. "She actually won." I blinked. "You're serious?" My mother's eyes sparkled, almost feverishly. 6 matching numbers. "Claire, 6. Do you understand what that means? We're free. That word stung. There had never been a we. Not when bills were due, not when the fridge was empty, not when I was skipping meals so she wouldn't go hungry. But now, suddenly, she remembered the plural form. I stepped closer. The numbers tugged at something in my memory. I'd seen them before, written on a gas station slip 2 weeks ago, the night I'd stopped for milk and bought a ticket on a whim. My breath caught in my throat. "Where did you get that?" I asked quietly. She laughed, misreading my tone. From my purse. I bought it last month but forgot about it. Can you imagine sitting right there, under the sugar jar? The sugar jar. My stomach dropped. That was my hiding spot. My ticket. For a moment, the world tilted. The smell of her perfume. The shine on Daniel's watch. The sunlight glinting off the glass coffee table, it all blurred into static. Mom, I said slowly, forcing the words through my tightening chest. That's my ticket. Her smile froze, then returned. Smaller, colder. Don't be ridiculous. Why would your ticket be in my kitchen because I trusted you, because I thought we were still a family? The words burned in my throat, but I couldn't say them. Instead, I stared at her, at Daniel's smug grin, at the ticket that could change everything. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. Money wasn't freeing her. It was exposing her. The greed, the pride, the years of bitterness, all of it was finally showing its face. And as she held that ticket like a crown, I felt the first spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Anger. Not the kind that begged for understanding, the kind that promised a reckoning. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mother's words echoed like static. It was under the sugar jar, the same place I'd hidden my ticket, the same numbers I'd written half asleep after a night shift. My fingers went numb as I stared at her, still smiling as if the universe had finally rewarded her devotion. Something inside me cracked, not with rage but with clarity. The weight of years, every favor, every bill, every quiet humiliation suddenly shifted. I looked at her, at Daniel lounging behind her, and a laugh tore from my throat before I could stop it. It wasn't polite laughter. It was the kind that bursts from disbelief, jagged and raw, the kind that doesn't ask permission. The room froze. My mother's painted smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "What's so funny?" she asked, her voice trembling with warning. I took a breath and wiped a tear from my cheek, still laughing softly. "That ticket you're holding." "Mom," I said, meeting her gaze, "isn't yours." Daniel's grin disappeared. He looked between us, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I bought it," I continued. My voice was calm now, too calm. 2 weeks ago, at the gas station on Elm Street. I left it under the sugar jar because I was going to check it after work. You must have found it. Her face twisted. "You're lying." "I'm not," I said. "You don't even buy tickets. You've said it 100 times, waste of money." Remember, she stood abruptly, clutching the ticket tighter. "If it was yours, why didn't you take it with you? Because I trusted you," I said quietly. "Because I thought this house was safe." The air turned electric. For the first time, Daniel didn't look sure of himself. He muttered, "Mom, maybe quiet," she snapped, glaring at him before turning back to me. "You think you can claim what's mine just because you paid a few bills? You've always been jealous of me, of this family." I shook my head slowly. "No. Mom, I've just been blind. I thought I was helping you survive, but all I was doing was feeding this," I pointed at the ticket, "this moment, this greed." Her mouth opened, ready to strike back, but then something strange happened. I stopped trembling. My voice evened out. I felt taller somehow. "You can keep pretending that ticket will save you," I said, "but it won't. It's already cost you more than you can afford." For the first time, she looked unsure. The queen in her posture cracked, replaced by something small, fragile. And then I smiled, not cruelly, but with the kind of peace that comes right before a storm. My mother's fingers trembled as she held the ticket, her knuckles whitening around it like it might vanish if she loosened her grip. I could see the panic flicker behind her eyes, that brief, fragile crack in her confidence. "Go ahead," I said softly. "Check the date." She blinked, confused for half a second, then looked down. Her lips began to move silently, reading each number, each line. I watched the color drain from her face as the truth bled through her expression. "This can't be right," she whispered. Daniel leaned forward, uneasy. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing." She snapped too quickly, clutching the ticket tighter. But her voice betrayed her thin, shaking, unraveling. "Last week's straw," I said, stepping closer. "That's what you're holding. It expired days ago." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to break the air. My mother's breath came out in shallow bursts, her eyes darting across the room as if she could find a different truth written on the walls. Daniel looked from her to me, his confusion morphing into disbelief. "You're lying," she said finally, but her tone was hollow. "You're trying to ruin this for me." I shook my head. "You already did that yourself." She stared at me, desperate, angry, lost. Then, "Where's the real one?" "Claire." I met her gaze evenly, in my wallet, where it's been since yesterday. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The silence between us stretched like glass, ready to shatter. "You threw me out over a worthless ticket," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You humiliated me, tore apart what little was left of us for nothing." Daniel sat back, eyes wide, suddenly seeing his mother for who she truly was. Margaret's hand fell to her side, the ticket still crumpled in her grasp. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I simply turned toward the door. "You wanted freedom," I said quietly. "Now you have it." And when I walked away this time, I didn't look back. The night air felt cleaner than it had in years. I walked away from the house, each step cutting another invisible thread that had tied me there for too long. The streetlights flickered over cracked pavement, and the cool wind filled the silence that my mother's voice used to own. For the first time, I wasn't her daughter, the provider, the fixer, the lifeline. I was just Claire Lawson, and that felt terrifyingly free. But freedom has a short shelf life when you've been raised in chaos. By morning, the calls started first Daniel, then Mom, then the blocked numbers. I ignored them all. I made coffee, sat by the window of my small apartment, and convinced myself it was over, that she'd realize what she'd done and let it die there. Then came the knock. Sharp, deliberate, like someone who didn't come to apologize. When I opened the door, Margaret Lawson stood there, every trace of last night's panic replaced by poise. Her lipstick was perfect, her hair neat, her expression calculated. She wasn't here as my mother. She was here as a strategist. "Claire," she said smoothly, the voice of practiced charm. "We need to talk." I didn't move. About what? She smiled. About the ticket. "Of course. We can still fix this. We're family." I almost laughed. "Last night, you said I wasn't." Her eyes hardened just for a moment. "I was emotional. You know how I get when I'm overwhelmed." She stepped closer. "I spoke to a lawyer this morning. He says since you lived under my roof when you bought the ticket, it could be argued that the winnings are shared household property." The words hit like a slap. "You're trying to steal from me legally." "Don't be dramatic," she said. "I'm trying to protect what's ours. You wouldn't know what to do with that much money. Claire, you've never handled responsibility well." That was her favorite weapon, belittlement, disguised as concern. I exhaled slowly. "Get off my doorstep." Her tone turned colder. "If you walk away from me, I'll ruin you. I'll tell everyone you stole that ticket from me. I'll drag you through court until you're broke. Who do you think they'll believe, the single waitress or the homeowner, for a heartbeat?" I felt like a child again, small, trapped, powerless. But then I saw it clearly, the manipulation, the same script she'd used my whole life. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. "The difference between you and me, Mom, is that I don't need anyone to believe me. The lottery office will, because the ticket's registered under my name. My ID, my purchase." Her composure cracked. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I shut the door before she could find another lie to stand behind. The slam echoed through the hallway like a gunshot, final and freeing. My hands were trembling, not from fear this time, but from resolve. She wasn't finished, but neither was I. And if she wanted a war, she'd just declared it on the wrong daughter. That night, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. The walls seemed to absorb the echoes of her threats, her voice crawling under my skin. I stared at the winning ticket on my kitchen table, the small slip of paper that had burned down everything I once called family. For years, I'd told myself I was strong because I stayed. That endurance was the same as love. But sitting there, alone, with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the ache in my chest, I realized how much of my life I'd built around her storms. I wanted to call someone, anyone, Daniel, maybe, but I already knew how that would go. He'd say Mom didn't mean it, that she just got carried away, the same excuse he'd used 100 times before. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar feeling of being truly alone. For the first time, I wasn't the daughter who fixed things. I was just a woman who'd lost everything she thought she was fighting for. I picked up the ticket, staring at the printed numbers until they blurred through tears. Then I whispered to myself, "You're not broken. You're finally free to start over." The words didn't heal me, but they stopped the shaking, and in that stillness, I found something I hadn't felt in years, my own strength. The next morning, I woke to a buzzing phone and a new kind of calm. The fear that had gripped me for years had burned out, leaving only clarity behind. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at the table, and began what felt less like revenge and more like self-defense. I started with the facts, receipts, screenshots, bank transfers, every payment I'd made over the years, rent, groceries, hospital bills, evidence of a daughter who carried a family on her back. I compiled them neatly into folders on my laptop, labeled by year, the proof of my life in numbers. Then I called the lottery office. The woman on the line confirmed what I already knew. The ticket was registered to my name, my ID, my signature on the purchase slip. Legal, final, undeniable. Still, I wasn't naive. My mother, Margaret Lawson, wouldn't back down quietly. She thrived on image, on sympathy. So, before she could twist the story, I made sure the truth had a head start. I sent the files to a few close friends, the ones who'd believed her lies for years. Then I posted a simple message online. Sometimes the people you save are the ones who try to drown you. But facts don't lie. It didn't take long. Within hours, messages poured in. Old classmates, cousins, even neighbors reached out with shock, disbelief, and apologies. The whispers spread faster than guilt ever could. By evening, my phone was flooded again, but this time with her voice. Voicemails layered with rage and panic. "You think humiliating me makes you strong? You'll regret this." Then, finally, a softer one. "Please, Claire, don't take everything from me. You're all I have." For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered her laughter when she threw me out. That sound had burned itself into my bones, a reminder of exactly who she was when she thought she'd won. I deleted every voicemail without listening to the end. Later that night, a journalist messaged me after seeing my post. She asked if I wanted to share my story, a story of betrayal, survival, and truth. I hesitated, then typed back, "Yes, but only if every word stays honest." I wasn't seeking revenge anymore. I was seeking closure, and this time, the world would hear my side first. The article hit the local paper 2 days later. Front page and unflinching, daughter's winning ticket, stolen by her own mother. My name beneath the headline felt surreal, like stepping into a story I never asked to tell. The journalist had kept her promise. Every word was true. Every sacrifice, every betrayal, every receipt. The town reacted fast. The grocery store where Mom used to chat with neighbors fell silent when she walked in. The church pew she'd claimed for years sat empty. Even the pastor's wife avoided her eyes. Online, sympathy evaporated. Screenshots of her messages circulated, each one twisting the knife deeper. Comments poured in. How could a mother do this? And she had everything and still wanted more. For years, Margaret Lawson had lived on reputation, respect, pity, control. Now, all of it cracked under the weight of truth. Daniel stopped defending her after the calls started. He couldn't face the stares either. One night, he texted me, "I didn't know she'd go this far." I didn't reply. I watched from a distance, not with joy, but with something quieter, detachment. The same woman who once ruled every corner of our house was now a stranger in her own life. Mom tried to fight back. She posted online, spinning a new version how I'd stolen the ticket, how she'd been the real victim. For a few hours, some believed her. But then came the screenshots, my posts, the proof. The backlash was brutal. The same people who once admired her now called her greedy, cold, pathetic. Her account went silent after that. I should have felt vindicated, but instead, all I felt was the hollow echo of victory. Watching her world collapse didn't make mine whole again. It just reminded me that love built on guilt will always end in ruins. A week after the article, the town had moved on, but my mother hadn't. I saw her once through the window of the diner where I worked, a small, hunched figure crossing the street, sunglasses hiding what little pride she had left. The world she built on appearances had finally stopped believing in her, and now all she had was silence. That night, the phone rang again. Her name flashed across the screen, the same as it had 100 times before. This time, I answered. The line was quiet at first, just the sound of her breathing. Then a voice, weak and stripped of its power. "People won't look at me anymore," she said. "They won't listen. You destroyed my life. Are you happy now?" I closed my eyes. The question didn't sting like it once would have. "No, Mom," I said softly. "I didn't destroy it. You did the moment you chose money over me." There was no reply, only the sound of her trying not to cry. For the first time, I didn't fill the silence for her. I let it stay, because sometimes silence is the only truth left. A few days later, I went to the lottery office to claim the winnings. The clerk smiled and handed me the check, congratulating me like I'd achieved a dream. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. The money couldn't replace what was lost, but it could build something new, something mine. As I walked out, sunlight spilled across the parking lot. I took a deep breath, the air cool and clean. For years, I'd carried the weight of saving someone who never wanted to be saved. Now, I was learning what it felt like to save myself. I saw my mother one last time a week later outside the grocery store. She froze when our eyes met, clutching a small paper bag to her chest. For a heartbeat. I almost smiled, almost waved, but I didn't. Some stories don't need words to end. Some just need peace. I turned away, the sound of her footsteps fading behind me. The real fortune wasn't in my wallet. It was in finally walking away and never looking back.